Delivery Malaysia 370, good morning.
Malaysian 370, standby.
At Kuala Lumpur International Airport, a Boeing 777 is preparing for departure.
Malaysian 370, request level.
370, we are ready, requesting flight level 350 to Beijing.
Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 is a daily passenger flight between Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia and Beijing, China.
370, 32 right of takeoff. Nice. 32 right, Malaysia, Malaysia 37, thank you, right.
42 minutes past midnight, Flight 370 is given clearance to depart. On board are Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, First Officer Fariq Abdul Hamid, 10 cabin crew members, and 227 passengers.
Number control, Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, Lumpur radar, good morning, climb flight level 250.
Morning, level 250, Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350.
Level 350, Malaysian 370.
Less than an hour into the flight, the plane is cruising over the South China Sea at an altitude of 35,000 feet. The night sky is clear and the weather is calm. Flight 370 is then instructed to signal air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, as it is about to enter Vietnamese airspace. The flight controller in Kuala Lumpur says goodnight, with no sign that anything should be amiss.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
1 minute and 43 seconds later, the aircraft suddenly vanish from radar screens at Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh, and Bangkok. This form of positional tracking depends on a signal being emitted by one of two transponders aboard a plane, and so its disappearance would suggest both transponders ceased to function, or the system was manually deactivated by someone on board. All subsequent attempts to contact and ascertain the whereabouts of Flight 370 are unsuccessful. The aircraft has seemingly vanished without a trace. After missing its scheduled time of arrival in Beijing some 4 hours later, Flight 370 is officially declared missing. And in the wake of that announcement, the most expensive search effort in aviation history is about to commence. The search was initially concentrated around the location of the flight's disappearance between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. The search area was soon expanded, however, after the Malaysian military disclosed additional information. Unlike the radar system employed by air traffic control, long-range military radar does not rely on transponders but use reflectance to track the position of aerial targets. A review of the data collected by the Malaysian military revealed that moments after contact with Flight 370 was lost, the aircraft had deviated from its scheduled flight path with a subtle turn to the right, followed by a prolonged turn to the left. The aircraft had then flown back towards and across the Malaysian Peninsula before turning right near the island of Penang. It maintained this northwesterly heading until it escaped the radar's coverage. Over the next few days, the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal was scoured by a multinational fleet of aircraft and vessels, but there was no trace of Flight 370. Meanwhile, investigators began to analyze the aircraft's satellite communication records. Like all modern airliners, Flight 370 was equipped with a satellite communications terminal, or SATCOM, to send and receive transmissions to and from the ground. Prior to departure, the SATCOM terminal had logged onto the satellite network and established a connection with a ground station in Perth, Australia. That station then maintained a detailed record of all the incoming and outgoing traffic between it and Flight 370. This is what it contained. Prior to the flight's disappearance over the South China Sea, everything appeared to be working as intended. Then, at some point during this portion of the flight, the SATCOM link was severed. For whatever reason, the terminal ceased to respond. But 3 minutes after the flight vanished over the Andaman Sea, the terminal requested to log back onto the network. The SATCOM link was successfully re-established and was not disrupted again until nearly 6 hours later, when the flight is presumed to have crashed due to fuel exhaustion. Australian investigators considered the possibility of someone deliberately extending the range of the flight by gliding the aircraft after fuel exhaustion. If so, the plane could have traveled an additional 200 kilometers. Alternatively, the range could have been reduced by a controlled ditching prior to fuel exhaustion. While ultimately deemed unlikely, these two scenarios did affect the search effort. If the captain steered Flight 370 off course with the intention of crashing in a remote part of the southern Indian Ocean, his motive is an even greater mystery. Zahari Ahmad Shah was 53 and married with 3 children. He had more than 18,000 hours of flight experience and a spotless track record. Investigators found no evidence of financial issues, and his monthly expenses before the disappearance indicated nothing unusual. He had no history of mental illness, nor had he displayed any recent changes in lifestyle or behavior. He was raised on the island of Penang, which has led some to speculate the flight's second turn to the southwest of Penang was the captain getting a final view of his hometown. Some believe a hijacking could have been politically motivated, as Zahari was an avid supporter of a democratic opposition leader who was sentenced to 5 years in prison mere hours before Flight 370 took off. Others point to unconfirmed reports of marital issues, but this is contradicted by the official investigation and disputed by family members. The only real inconsistency noted by the final report is that the captain failed to repeat the assigned radio frequency during the last verbal communication.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
It would have been standard procedure to repeat the assigned frequency, as the captain had correctly done a few minutes prior.
370, contact Lumpur radar 1326, good night.
Alright, 1326 Malaysian 370.
Whether this omission is indicative of anything but a mistake is anyone's best guess. By all accounts, Captain Zahari was an affable and well-respected pilot who was passionate about aviation, as evident by the photos and videos he shared on social media.
Hi everyone, this is a YouTube video that I made as a community service after learning.
The co-pilot was found to be even less conspicuous. Farik Abdul Hamid was only 27, and due to marry a fellow pilot, he had nearly 3,000 hours of flight experience, although only 39 hours in this type of aircraft. Much like Zahari, Farik had no financial, mental or interpersonal issues of note, nor was there any evidence of conflict between the two of them. Some questioned the plausibility of a pilot-instigated hijacking due to the apparent lack of interference by the other pilot. Well, when Ethiopian Airlines Flight 702 was hijacked by the co-pilot in February of 2014, he did so by merely waiting for the captain to take a bathroom break before locking the cockpit door behind him. The co-pilot was then free to divert the Italy-bound flight to Switzerland to seek asylum. The only noteworthy piece of evidence in regards to the co-pilot of Flight 370 is his phone. You see, when the confidential documents were leaked, they also confirmed another long-circulated rumor, namely that a cell phone tower had briefly established a connection with an iPhone 5S belonging to the co-pilot as Flight 370 approached the island of Penang. According to investigators, it was not a phone call, as has been widely reported by the media, but merely an automatic location signal. Why this information was omitted from public reports, we may never know. So what is one to make of all of this? On the one hand, the simulated flight path seems suspicious. On the other, it is difficult to cast any substantial doubt on either of the two pilots' character. It is equally difficult to deny a hijacking is consistent with the available evidence. Then again, we're missing some quite major and literal pieces of evidence. The final report issued by the Malaysian government in 2018 could not attribute the loss of communication nor diversion of Flight 370 to a malfunction. Instead, it is believed that someone manually manipulated the aircraft and its systems. For instance, investigators believe SATCOM was manually disabled by a sudden and prolonged interruption of power. Then, once power was restored, the terminal simply rebooted. Likewise, the alterations in heading are believed to be the result of manual inputs. With that being said, the uncertainty of these findings are repeatedly emphasized due to the limited evidence available, and the report does never explicitly state the flight was hijacked. In fact, no real conclusion is reached. Both the Malaysian and Australian government agree that Flight 370 crashed in the southern Indian Ocean, but that the cause is indeterminable without the wreckage, the location of which has managed to elude some of the foremost aviation experts in the world, as well as an impressive arsenal of cutting-edge technology for more than half a decade. Authors, aviation experts, and independent investigators have all chimed in to offer their own thoughts and theories as to the nature of the crash and the location of the wreckage. Some believe there was no crash, but that the aircraft was shot down by an American naval base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The satellite transmissions were then supposedly forged as part of a massive cover-up. Others believe the aircraft turned right towards India and traveled as far north as Kazakhstan, completely undetected. Debris was then supposedly planted along shorelines of southeastern Africa as part of a massive cover-up. Another theory suggests the aircraft was remotely hijacked and controlled by someone on the ground. While Boeing and other companies have experimented with technology that would allow for an aircraft to be remotely controlled, no commercial airliner is known to be outfitted with such a system. On the less conspiratorial side, the assumption that Flight 370 flew in a straight line and at a constant speed after turning left towards the southern Indian Ocean might simply be incorrect. In early 2018, a French team of independent investigators proposed an alternate flight path, whereby an attempted landing on Christmas Island led to a crash site much further north than the region identified by the official investigation. While a surface search of this area was conducted about a week after the disappearance, the underwater phase never reached this far north.